What's going on, people? It's Kish Yardie Gaming Nation, or Kish Yardie Views and Vlogs. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe to the channel. We're here for this again, and again. First of all, I love when y'all FBA niggas type in my chat, and say what you say in my chat, because guess what that gives me to do? Opportunity to do. To go research what you're talking about and prove your dumb ass wrong. So, I'm actually happy that y'all doing that. I hope y'all do that to this video. Let me go into one of the videos or one of the comment sections that I have. So this right here, right? Let me share this on the screen. Share. Are we even going to use Grok? I might use Grok here, but I'm going to use one of these, right? So this one, fake commentary. Hopefully, you can see the share. Oh, my bad. You can't see it. There we go. Fake commentary. Black Americans did not reject Marcus Garvey. If they did, why did they imprison and deport him? Garvey documented his intent and activities. His intent and activities cannot be distorted. Black Americans did not reject Marcus Garvey. Well, so let's get into specifics. The Black American elite, W.E. Du Bois, and I'm going to show you what W.E. Du Bois called him, right? A lot of the Black elite, a lot of the Marxist Black people, the bourgeoisie Black people, if you want to call them that, they rejected Marcus Garvey. And I think in that video, I broke that down. A lot of the Caribbean Blacks that were there in the 19th century to the 1930s, and then going on to the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of those Black Americans did not like those Jamaican Blacks there. They rejected them because their ideologies were diametrically opposed or adverse to each other, right? I'm going to show that in here. All right. I did not deny this. Look at this. I didn't even see this shit. Look. F. Garvey. My bad. Let me show you. Oh, F. Garvey, William Monroe, Trotter, Du Bois were right about him. Look at this. And by y'all commenting in my chat, what are you talking about? Large amounts? What's the large amount number? Because I can show you there were quite a few large amounts of Black Americans that did not like Garvey. Maybe you're talking about the poor class Black Americans, the working class Black Americans. But the Black Americans who were the elite, they did not like him. I did not deny this. And I'm going to show you the differentiation between Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey. And this lie, Jamaicans rejected Garvey. Which Jamaicans? The poor class, working class Jamaicans, or the Jamaican elites? I do know my history, and I'm going to present that. And this person's right here, he's actually correct. He's actually correct. So this would actually put me in check right here, right? This comment, right? All you know is that he failed in Jamaica and succeeded in America. The people who supported him went to America, not just gave him well wishes and warm fuzzies. A lot of y'all don't know what the fuck you talking about. The only person who knows something is this brother right here. Richard Grant. And so, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Right. Marcus Garvey deportation was from the U.S., not Jamaica. So the U.S. deported Jamaica. Okay. The truth step by step. Marcus Garvey's deportation was from the U.S., not Jamaica. Garvey was deported from the United States in 1927 after being convicted of mail fraud in relation to the Black Star Line, a conviction that was politically motivated and widely considered unjust. When he was deported, he returned to Jamaica, not Europe. Jamaica did not reject him in any formal way. When Garvey returned home in 1927, many Jamaicans welcomed him initially as a national hero and the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA. However, Jamaica at the time was a British colony, so the colonial government and elite class, mostly mixed and brown middle class, were suspicious and hostile toward him. That's the difference. This is the difference right here, right? The elite class, right? And in Jamaica, that is true, right? In Jamaica, I always call it the light hierarchy in Jamaica, where white people at the top, then it's the Chinese or Asians, then it's the Punjab Indians or the Indians, then it's the light skin black, then it's the brown skin black, like my color, then it's the dark skin black, right? I was just saying, like in Jamaica, right? It's a status similar to Black America. In Jamaica, you're a high status if you get a Benz and a pretty brownie, right? When Buju Banton did that song about Browning, he had to come back and apologize for that song because he highlighted something that is an actual fact in Jamaica, and it made the dark skin. It was like a slight towards darker skinned Jamaicans. The same shit that gets played out here in Black America, right? The tension wasn't that the people rejected him. It was that the British colonial system and the light-skinned elite did not want his militant pro-Black and anti-colonial ideas to spread. So while the Jamaican masses still admired him, the establishment blocked his influence. Now, mind you, the militant pro-Blackness that's here in America, Jamaican niggas gave, or Caribbean niggas gave you that identity. Remember Kwame Ture, or it was a Trinidadian that coined the phrase Black Power, and he pushed it, right? A lot of the Black Power radicalism you see going on in Black America amongst the pro-Blacks, Marcus Garvey inspired that. Remember, shout out to Captain Tazariak, right? The Jamaicans, we are the tribe of Benjamin. We're the howling wolf. And I think if you look up the story of Benjamin, Benjamin was like one of the most powerful warrior, like a warrior tribe because they were good with the bow and the arrow, right? While the Jamaican masses still admired him, the establishment blocked his influence, sort of like W.E. Du Bois' establishment with the Black elite in the Black America. And what FBA is trying to do today, right? Garvey's political career in Jamaica, 1927 to 1935. After returning, Garvey founded the People Political Party, the PPP. In 1929, Jamaica's first modern political party, published the newspaper The Black Man, advocated for workers' rights and land reform and education for the poor. Sound familiar? And despite his efforts, the colonial authorities heavily censored him, sabotaged his events, and even jailed him briefly in 1934 on a libel charge. This made it extremely difficult for him to operate effectively, leaving for Europe. By 1935, after years of political persecution and economic struggle in Jamaica, Garvey moved to London to continue his work. So yes, he left Jamaica for Europe, but not because the Jamaican people rejected him. He left mainly because the colonial system had crippled his ability to function politically. His movement power base, the UNI, had weakened after his U.S. deportation. He wanted to operate from a more strategic global center, London, to continue writing and organizing. He lived in London until his death in 1940, right? So it wasn't that he just fled to London because Jamaica rejected him. The colonial power was against him. Where did Jamaica reject him comes from? The idea likely comes from a mix of colonial propaganda from the 1930s that portrayed Garvey as a troublemaker and a failure. Class tension in Jamaica. The upper middle class distanced themselves from him because his radical Black nationalist stance threatened their proximity to British rule. Call it like FBA, right? You want your proximity right, to be closer to the white people in America, or the liberal left elite, or the conservative left, or the conservative right elite. Because technically, if you listen to how Tariq Nasheed talks, he talks like he's from the right. If you listen to a lot of FBA talk, they don't want to just separate themselves from white people, but they want to separate Caribbean blacks from white people. It's very similar, right? Later historical simplification. Some writers reduce his departure to a personal rejection story instead of acknowledging the political oppression he faced. So let me read that again. Later historical simplification. Some writers reduce his departure to a personal rejection story instead of acknowledging the political oppression he faced. I bet you that's a lot of FBA from the W.E. Du Bois camp, right? In summary, Jamaica did not reject Marcus Garvey in the popular sense. He was oppressed by the colonial government and the elite class, not by the Jamaican people. His departure to London was a strategic retreat, not an exile by rejection. His influence remained strong among the black poor and working class, both in Jamaica and globally. When people say Jamaica rejected Marcus Garvey, they're making an oversimplified and misleading generalization. It ignores the class, political, and colonial dynamics at play. Here's a proper breakdown of what that vague phrase actually refers to when you unpack it. The masses versus the elite. The Jamaican masses, mostly poor, working class people, loved Garvey. He spoke directly to them, gave them pride, and offered a vision of empowerment and self-determination, like he did for Black Americans. The elites, on the other hand, mostly light-skinned, educated, and aligned with British colonial power, rejected him. They thought his racial pride, African unity, and militant tone were too radical and embarrassing to the colonial establishment. So when someone said Jamaica rejected him, they're really describing how the colonial elite and political system treated him, not the people. Colonial suppression. Garvey's newspaper, The Black Man, was censored. His party events were restricted, and he was imprisoned on a technical libel charge. I got to go look up what that is. In 1934. That's not rejection by Jamaicans. That's oppression by a colonial system under British rule. That's the context y'all missing. Jamaica at the time was still under the British caste system. It wasn't independent yet until the 1960s. Later on, especially in the mid-20th century, some historians, journalists, and even rival Pan-Africanists started summarizing his struggles in Jamaica with lazy phrases like, he was rejected at home. They made it sound like Jamaicans as a people turned on him, when in truth, he was targeted by the British establishment and undermined by a color class hierarchy that didn't reflect the will of the people. Why it matters. That's false framing his consequences. It subtly paints Jamaicans and by extension Black people as being incapable of honoring their own heroes. Which Black Americans, you don't honor none of your heroes. FBA. Y'all rejected Marcus Garvey and a lot of the Nation of Islam rhetoric at their first inception. Go look at the battles between Malcolm X and a lot of the Black liberals at the time. Right? When the real issue was colonial control, Garvey's story wasn't one of rejection, it was one of betrayal by a colonial system and resilience in the face of internalized oppression. In short, the phrase Jamaicans rejected Marcus Garvey is a lazy generalization, like a lot of FBA are lazy. The truth, Jamaican people revered him. The colonial elite and government suppressed him. Garvey's early life. This is why he was able to speak to the poor Black people, right? Born August 17, 1987 in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica. Parents, his father, Marcus Garvey Sr., was a stonemason and a self-taught scholar. His mother, Sarah Jane Richards, was a domestic worker and farmer. The family was poor but proud. His father owned a small library, rare for working-class Jamaicans at the time. Garvey grew up reading constantly, hearing his father say, if you have no wealth, make learning your wealth. This gave him both intellectual grounding and humility, because he lived among working-class Jamaicans, saw poverty firsthand, and yet grew up valuing self-education and pride. Working-class roots as a teenager. Garvey worked as a printer apprentice in Kingston, was a member of the typographical union, where he learned about workers' rights, labor struggles, and organizing, witnessed racial discrimination in wages and job access, even among skilled Black workers. Isn't that something similar struggle that a lot of Black Americans was going through at the time in America and today? Those experiences turned him into a natural advocate for poor and labor-oriented in his thinking. He wasn't theorizing Pan-Africanism from a mansion. He lived the struggle. In his 20s, Garvey traveled to Central America, Costa Rica, Panama, where he saw West Indian laborers exploited on banana plantations and in the Panama Canal Zone, to London 1912 to 1914, where he encountered Pan-African thinkers and colonial racism in British Empire South. So you can technically say he got his idea, his brain and mentality on Pan-Africanism was shaped by things outside of America, like London, Central America, and those things where a lot of black people were, right? Those travel where a lot of those black people were sent to during the slave trade, right? Those travels expanded his view from black Jamaicans need help to black race globally is being exploited by white imperial powers. So his message to the working class Jamaican wasn't abstract. It was globalized, local playing. He told them, your suffering is not because you're lazy, but because the world systems profit from keeping you down. That resonated instantly. Speaking their language, Garvey had a way of talking like the people, not at them. So Marcus Garvey inspiration not only came from, I want to say Booker T. Washington, his inspiration came from various places before Booker T, like Central America, Costa Rica, Panama, London, where ironically in that movie Spider-Man with Miles Morales, where did Miles Morales get his spark from? Remember that British Rasta dude with the dreads in the movie that told him to don't follow a social. I think that brother was Sigma, right, or Alpha Sigma hybrid or something like that. That's who gave him his thought. Miles Morales' thought on rebelling against the Spideyverse, right? Right. So he said things like, "God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be." Woo! I'm going to read that again. God and nature first made us what we are, and then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. He can move from quoting Shakespeare to talking about Negro redemption in a way that felt both lofty and familiar. Yeah, listen, Marcus Garvey had his own identity before he touched America. Nigga, give him his respect. Poor working class black Jamaicans saw in Garvey a man like them who rose by his own mind and courage, some who didn't bow to the white colonial system or brown middle mulatto elites, a leader who gave them a sense of racial dignity and economic vision, black business, ships, schools, etc. He was first a black leader in Jamaica who didn't ask for white approval. He spoke directly to the people, sense of pride, and justice and divine worth. So he was who he was before he touched America. Bro. Shout out to that ancestor. Whether in Jamaica, America, or Africa, the moment a leader rose from the grassroots and started preaching black self-definition and independence, the buffer class, those with proximity to colonial white power, moved to contain or discredit him, like a lot of FBA. Because FBA, you're in proximity to the white liberal elites and the left-right elites. Because FBA is conservative in thinking. The Jamaican elite in Garvey's time, late 1800s to 1930s, were mostly mixed race. Brown or light-skinned Jamaicans descended from free coloreds, mixed African and European ancestry from the 18th to 19th centuries. Some were offspring of planters and enslaved women. After emancipation in 1838, this group became the educated middle class, buffer between the white ruling minority and the black majority. They were nationalized Jamaicans, yes, but culturally British. They saw themselves as civilized, refined, and closer to the crown than the darker-skinned peasantry. So, this is where you get a lot of those like elite Jamaicans talk about speaking proper English. Speak like the Queen's language. Don't speak their broken patois. You know what I'm saying? That's where that comes from, right? They formed a colonial bourgeoisie, loyal to the British Empire for status, not race, solidarity, right? By the way, when you hear bourgeoisie and you hear proletariat, that's Marxist language, right? Bourgeoisie is like the elite class. Proletariat is like the working class, right? But funny enough, Marcus Garvey was a capitalist. He spoke capitalist liberation through capitalism, right? because he didn't like that whole idea of elite class, and he saw that as something specific to white people. But he saw that black people can benefit from a capitalist structure, regardless of what class position you're in, right? But yeah, let's continue. Were they out of the monarchy? Not literally. They weren't part of the royal family, but symbolically and psychologically, yes. They identify with Britain's monarchy and aristocracy. I can't say this out of these names. Sorry. All right. They dressed British, educated their children in British manners, spoke the Queen's English, and prided themselves on not being like the common Negro. They were colonial loyalists, maintaining their privileges by enforcing British values and distance from African-rooted majority. Right. Garvey's rival, his rhetoric, his self-determination threatened their entire social order. He said to poor black Jamaicans, stop idolizing white culture. Build your own schools, your own ships, your own business, your own pride. That message was revolutionary because it undermined the brown elite middleman role. It questioned the legitimacy of the British culture supremacy. It told poor people they didn't need respectable intermediaries to define their work. In other words, Garvey bypassed the gatekeepers. He spoke directly to the people in a language they understood, with dignity they could feel, and in doing so, he made the brown elite irrelevant. So they attacked him in the newspapers, mocked him as a demagogue, and aligned with the colonial government to neutralize him. The same shit W.E. Du Bois did. They called him dangerous, not because he was violent, but because he was liberating minds without their permission. Let me ask ChatGPT something. So ChatGPT, what was one of the things that W.E. Du Bois called Marcus Garvey? What did he call him? And it was negative towards Marcus Garvey. Read this. Yes, W.E. Du Bois was extremely critical of Marcus Garvey. And hold on, so let me make sure I show this up here. Yes, W. Du Bois was extremely critical of Marcus Garvey. And one of the most infamous things he called him was the most dangerous enemy of the Negro race in America and in the world. Whew! He also insulted Garvey and personally called him a little fat black man with a big head. Wow. In writing in the Crisis magazine, the NAACP publication, which is all FBA, which W. Du Bois edited, that called Garvey was a fraud, a demagogue, and even compared him to a lunatic or a traitor. That sound like FBA accepted, FBA blacks? My fault. At the time, accepted him? No. Du Bois and Garvey conflict wasn't just personal. It was ideological and class-based. Du Bois' perspective believed the talented, and educated black elite should lead and uplift the race. Garvey's perspective believed in mass empowerment. The everyday black worker and farmer were the backbone of liberation, which is true. Work within the white power structure. Harvard, see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Right? Make sure y'all see that. Look what I'm saying. Look at this. Work within the white power structure. Ain't that what FBA doing? But differently, they went the right. Work outside the structure. This is a sigma. I think Marcus Garvey could have been an alpha with some sigma traits. This is a sigma move right here. Everything on Garvey right here, a lot of this is sigma tactics. Work outside that structure, preaching self-reliance and independence. Advocated separation, economic independence, and nationhood. This is a sigma. I believe Garvey's personality was. Let me ask ChatGPT that. Du Bois saw Garvey as a reckless and dangerous because Garvey openly talked about black nationalism, Pan-African unity, and self-rule, while Du Bois feared that kind of rhetoric would make white America crack down harder on all black progress. Really? If Marcus Garvey is telling y'all to come up with your own structure, your own power base, it would have made it difficult for them to do that. He wrote, Marcus Garvey is without a doubt the most dangerous enemy of the Negro race in America and in the world. He's either a lunatic or a traitor. That line became legendary. It exposed a deep class ideological divide between black elite and the black grassroots that still echoes today. It echoes to what that nigga said to me in that comment section I showed you. Let me ask a question. Based on Marcus Garvey birth chart, Do you think he leans more to a Sigma? Right? Because now when you look at something in the context, when he says work outside the structure, preaching self-reliance and independence, that's a Sigma move right there. Sigmas typically do that. Framework. Let's break it down. Marcus Garvey, born August 17, 1887, Zodiac sign, Leo sun, Virgo, right? Natural expressor, natural leader. Inner confidence, doesn't need to external validation to lead. Sagittarius moon, discipline, long-term planning. Strategic goal, build system rather than begging for inclusion. That's a Sigma. Self-education, critical thinking. Independent learning is self-made. Refinement, Sigma mindset. So he had confidence of a Leo, the vision of a Sagittarius, and the discipline of a Capricorn, all challenged through self-thought, practical Virgo lens. The textbook Sigma energy. An independent, self-contained leader who doesn't follow conventional hierarchies. The essence of Benjamin. Let me ask this. When you look at the Jamaicans, because they like to attach Jamaicans to the Benjamin archetype, right? Benjamin, part of the 12 tribes of Israel. When you look at Benjamin, do you think the essence of Jamaicans and Marcus Garvey align with Benjamin? And can you do a brief story about Benjamin and the role he played in the 12 tribes and how Benjamin was considered to be a powerful warrior tribe? I gotta get some tissue. Shit. The tribe in Benjamin is described in the Hebrew Bible as one of the most valiant, intense, and spiritually fierce tribes of Israel. So yes, the striking parallels between Benjamin archetype and the Jamaican spirit, particularly as embodied in figures like Marcus Garvey. Who was Benjamin? Benjamin was the youngest son of Jacob. This is giving me content. Sorry. Benjamin was the youngest son of Jacob, Israel, and his beloved wife Rachel. He was the only son born in the land of Canaan, meaning he represented a new generation born inside the promised land. His name Benjamin means the son of the right hand, symbolizing power, favor, and authority. Rachel died giving birth to him, so his birth was marked by both pain and prophecy, a pattern that reappears in how Benjamin descendants live. Benjamin tribal traits. Throughout scripture, the tribe of Benjamin stood out for being fierce warriors, strategic and bold, small in number but mighty in battle. And tell me that's not Jamaican niggas and the Maroons. Often misunderstood and underestimated, Sigma and my life story. Loyal to their identity even under pressure, me. Benjamin produced some of the most skilled fighters in Israel. Judges 20 describes 26,000 Benjamin soldiers, among them 700 elite left-handed warriors who could sling a stone at the hair and not miss. The precision, discipline, and warrior instinct that embodies Jamaica. Look at the Shao posse in a lot of the gangs. That embodies them. Look at even the political Jamaicans or the Rastafarian community or the Maroons. A lot of that embodies that. Benjamin's prophetic blessing. When Jacob blesses his sons, Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. The verse has been interpreted as meaning Benjamin people would be fierce, independent, and powerful in both attack and survival. They would fight in the morning early stages of struggle and divide the spoils in the evening when the victory comes. In other words, Benjamin represents resilience, self-reliance, and courage under oppression, all traits that describes Jamaica's history to the letter. Woo! When you look at Jamaican culture through this biblical lens, the parallel is almost poetic. Tribe of Benjamin, small tribe but mighty. Jamaican archetype, small island with outsized global influence. Known for fearless warriors, Maroons, freedom fighters, Garveyites, Rastafari, reggae revolutionaries. Wolf tribe, fierce in battle. Jamaica's reputation for boldness, militancy, and defiance. Born through the struggle and loss. Jamaica's birth through slavery, colonialism, and resistance. So Jamaica already had a slave resistance outside of Black America already. So by the time Marcus Garvey and the Caribbean blacks came to a Black America, that's the energy we brought that a lot of your Black American elites did not like. Known for spiritual power and passion, deep spiritual core, revivalism, Rastafari, prophetic energy, tribal loyalty and self-identity, national pride and distinct cultural strength. Marcus Garvey as a Benjamin archetype, warrior leadership, led a global liberation movement under heavy opposition. Wolf mentality, attack at dawn, divide at dusk. Built his movement from nothing, dawn, inspired generations after, exile, dusk, right? Defender of the people, advocated for poor, the laborer, and the enslaved descendants, small but mighty. From a small island, yet impacted the entire African diaspora. Rebellious but righteous, seen as a troublemaker by elites but revered by the people. My life story. Prophetic and visionary, preached self-rule, African redemption, and Black unity. Decades ahead of his time. Because a lot of you blacks in America, Black Americans in the FBA, whether you like to admit it or not, your movement is inspired by this. Garvey's energy, bold, self-sufficient, and defiant, aligns perfectly with the Benjamin vibration. He was the kind of leader who didn't wait for permission to rise. He simply declared it and moved the people to follow. His famous quote, "If you have no confidence in self, you're twice defeated in the race of life." It's pure Benjamin spirit. That's the wolf talking. Confident, fearless, and self-defined. Excuse me for getting emotional. Right? In Rastafari tradition, the connection between Jamaica and the 12 tribe of Benjamin is deeply rooted. They believe the 12 tribe of Israel is spiritually represented throughout the African diaspora, with Jamaica symbolizing Benjamin, the royal tribe who refuses to bow. That is a sigma. That's sigma to the bone. Benjamin energy is rebellious but disciplined, fierce but loyal, outnumbered but unstoppable, spiritually aware and divinely protected. Jamaicans throughout history, from Nanny of the Maroons, Paul Bogle, and Marcus Garvey, to the Rastafari movement, all embodied the Benjamin vibration, defiance in the face of an empire, fire in the soul, and leadership born from struggle. You will never get me to hate my Jamaican lineage, identity. And I don't want FBA to hate theirs, because y'all are from the tribe of Judah. Now, the problem is that you got elite Negroes in your society that want you to go against your brethren. Just like you got elite Negroes in Jamaica that want us to go against our brethren. And that's the main point that I'm trying to issue. We're pawns on the chessboard being played against each other. The wolf, strength and cunning, lying, courage and defiance. Role in Israel, warriors, protectors, loyal to the Judah. Defenders of culture, Pan-Africanism, Black pride. Nature, small but fierce. Small island, global impact. Destiny, born through pain, destined for power. Born through slavery, destined for freedom. Modern embodiment, King Saul, Apostle Paul. Marcus Garvey, Nanny, Rastafari, prophets. So yes, when you look at it symbolically, the Jamaican archetype absolutely aligns with the tribe of Benjamin. Marcus Garvey's life was the Benjamin prophecy made flesh, a wolf among nations, fighting for his people, freedom and spreading the flame of self-reliance to the world. All of this is Sigma. Garvey has a Sigma archetype. Operates outside established hierarchies, refused to work through white-led institutions like NAACP, built his own movement, self-reliant, taught self-education, raised pride and economic independence, quietly dominant, doesn't seek validation, didn't beg for recognition from white elites or light-skinned Black elites. Misunderstood by mainstream, vilified by Du Bois, monitored by the FBI, and mocked by Jamaican elite, yet remained steadfast. Jamaican elite, and I already broke this down. Visionary but detached, focused on nationhood, not popularity, saw beyond local politics to global race redemption. Loyal to principle, not to groups. Broke from everyone, white liberals, mulatto elites, and even African leaders who compromised. This is why it's very difficult for me to be on a panel and to hear when I feel like this or I hear something that's wrong, to me to go along with that. I'm going to break away from it, regardless of how that socially makes me look or how many dick suckers you want to call me. Garvey was a prototype of a Sigma leader. Alpha energy and command, omega independence and thinking, lone wolf resilience and execution. He wasn't trying to fit in with the elite, with the white elite, like the Bois. The opponent to black elites for validation. He literally said, we're not invited to the table of civilization. We should build our own table. Woo! We are not invited to the table of civilization. We should build our own table. We were not invited to the table of civilization. We shall build our own table. None of y'all niggas study Marcus Garvey. None of y'all niggas. Let me put my face in this. None of y'all study Marcus Garvey. None of y'all did. Because that speaks to me. I don't know how it doesn't speak to y'all. I don't know how black people in America don't resonate with that. But how do black men in America and the Diaspora and Jamaica and Trinidad, how y'all don't resonate with that? That embodies everything that black men should be fighting. I was on Angry Man's panel. And he read out the sick code. Let me play that code. Let me play the sick code, sick creed. Let me play the sick creed. I'll play the sick creed. Go find it. Sick creed. The sick creed. Let me plug something into chat GPT. Do you believe when you refer to the Sith order of Star Wars? Do you think a lot of the essence of Benjamin and what Marcus Garvey talked about, do you think it embodies the Sith's creed? So let me play it. Hopefully y'all can hear it.
That's a creative comparison to make. The Sith code in Star Wars, open quote, peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken, close quote, is built around personal willpower, intensity, and self-liberation, which can sound a lot like Garvey's emphasis on self-reliance and breaking mental or social chains. Where they diverge is in intent and ethics. The Sith pursues strength mainly for domination and control. Garvey pursued strength to free and uplift his people, not to rule over them. You could say both operate from a similar energy current, a belief that freedom must be taken through inner fire, but Garvey's version stays rooted in moral purpose and collective empowerment. It's closer to a righteous warrior archetype, passion harnessed for liberation, not for ego or tyranny. So thematically, shared essence, discipline, self-mastery, defiance, independence, different spirit. The Sith seek personal supremacy. Garvey sought communal redemption. If you ever wanted to illustrate that cinematically, you could frame Garvey's message as the light side of the Sith code. Same intensity, but driven by justice instead of conquest.
Okay. So for those of you who didn't hear it, because I didn't put it on the screen in the beginning, right? That's a creative comparison to make. The Sith code of Star Wars, peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. The power, I gain victory. The victory, my chains are broken. It's built around personal willpower, intensity, and self-liberation, which can sound a lot like Garvey's emphasis on self-reliance and breaking mental or social chains. Where they diverge is in the intent and ethics. The Sith pursues strength mainly for domination and control. Garvey pursues strength to free and uplift his people, not to rule over them. You could say both operate from a similar energy current, a belief that freedom must be taken through inner fire. But Garvey's versions stay rooted in moral purpose and collective empowerment. It's closer to the righteous warrior archetype, passion hardness for liberation, not for ego or tyranny. So, thematically, shared essence, discipline, self-mastery, defiance, independence, different spirit. The Sith seek personal supremacy. Garvey sought communal redemption. Right? Let me play the Sith code for a better understanding. So that female voice, she like, it doesn't describe it. Sith code.
Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The force shall set me free.
If you listen to that closely and you pay attention, I know AI said one thing, but when you listen to the essence of, or the echo of what Marcus Garvey is preaching, I feel it. I don't know how anybody else feels it. And you listen to that Sith code, it like the essence of it is there. You play a different voice.
There is only peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The force shall free me. Nul Tosh.
I don't know how any black man in America or any black man in the diaspora cannot resonate with the Sith code or resonate with Marcus Garvey's principle, which makes me wonder. I don't think any of y'all studied Marcus Garvey. I don't think any of you did. I think when y'all bring up Marcus Garvey, when I look at the diaspora in general, when I look at how the Caribbean blacks are, when I look at FBA blacks, or not even, no, scratch that. I know there are black Americans that don't consider themselves FBA. When I look at black people in America and black people in the Caribbean and the diaspora, I really don't think you studied Marcus Garvey. I don't really think you really resonate with what he talks about. I don't think you really studied him. I think you just say the name for as you would say in the modern time, clicks of views. Because I'm reading it. I'm studying it, and I feel what he meant. It resonates with me because my life story is similar to that. Was born in East New York, Brooklyn, moved to Queens. My whole life misunderstood. You know. But yeah, let's continue with the presentation. All right. The same dynamic showed up in America, just with different labels. In the U.S., the black bourgeoisie, those connected to the northern liberal universities, white philanthropy, and government access, often distrusted grassroots black populism. Examples: Booker T. Washington versus the talented tent under Du Bois, Malcolm X versus the integrationist black leadership class. Even today, establishment black politicians and academics often clash with working class voices calling for self-determination. In both Jamaica and the U.S., the elites fear losing control over the narrative of what progress looked like. Garvey's model, self-made, self-defining, independent, black power, was too decentralized. When you say decentralizing, you're trying to detach yourself from a top-down communist or Marxist government, or be a Marxist or communist government. So now, if you look at America and capitalism and the Constitutional Republic, it's a separation of states. It's not all consolidated and centralized into one bureaucracy, right? So, when you say you look at words like decentralized, depending on the context, it could be good or bad, right? Too empowering, too unmanageable. What they were trying to protect, they were protecting their proximity to white power, access, respectability, safety. Their intermediate role. The colonial system needed them to manage the darker poor. Their identity as not like the masses, not like us, like Kendrick Lamar, right? Garvey flipped all of that by saying, you're not free until your people are free. You're not superior to your race. You're a servant of it. I'm going to say that again. Garvey flipped all of that by saying, you are not free until your people are free. Ain't that what Marcus Garvey said? Not Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X said. He said, I am not free till my people are free. You are not free until my people are free. You are not superior to your race. You're a servant of it. That message was a death sentence to the colonial psychology. The meaning of it all. So what does all of this mean? It means that the Garvey's revolution was psychological before it was political. He shattered the illusion that progress required validation from those above you. And that's the same war being fought today, between those who believe Black progress must come through elite institutions and gatekeepers, versus those who believe it must come through grassroots ownership, culture, and self-definition. Let me read this again. So it means that Garvey's revolution was psychological before it was political. He shattered the illusion that progress required validation from those above you, and that the same war being fought today between those who believe Black progress must come through elite institutions and gatekeepers, versus those who believe it must come through grassroots ownership, culture, and self-definition. Booker T. Washington, The Origin of the Bottom-Up Builder. So, unlike the FBA, I'm going to give credit where credit is due, right? Booker T. Washington, the originator of the bottom-up builder. Born 1856, enslaved in Virginia, died 1915. Background: born enslaved, freed as a child after the Civil War. Worked his way through school during mental labor. Deeply respected discipline, industry, and self-help. Founded the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, a vocational school to train Black men and women in trades, farming, and industry. Philosophy: self-help through economic power. Washington believed people could rise by acquiring practical skills: carpentry, farming, masonry, mechanics. And that's probably why Marcus Garvey was inspired by it, because him and Marcus Garvey come from a similar upbringing, right? Build Black businesses and institutions, earning respect through productivity and moral discipline. Avoiding direct confrontation, white supremacy, until economic independence made confrontation unnecessary. In all things purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as was the hand in all things, essentially the mutual progress. I kind of like that quote. In all things purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in all things, essentially mutual progress. Booker T. Washington, Atlanta Compromise, Address, 1895, right? The only thing with that is that at the time, white people didn't want you putting part of their hand of elite. You feel me? And the only way you can be part of the hand of the elite, you got to bow down to them. What this model really was: conservative in tone, radical in structure. Whose political rights were meaningless without economic independence, which I agree. He quietly funded lawsuits and civil rights causes, even when publicly preaching accommodation. But his image became that of a man who accepted segregation in exchange for Black self-development. Marcus Garvey, the Pan-African expansion model, born 1887 in St. Ann Bay, Jamaica, 31 years after Washington, died in 1940 in London. How Washington influenced Garvey. Around 1910 to 1911, Garvey read Washington's autobiography, Up from Slavery, and was deeply inspired. He wrote to Washington, even planned to visit Tuskegee. Garvey saw in Washington the perfect example of self-reliance, discipline, and racial pride, expressed through economics. When he founded UNI, in 1914, its motto, one God, one aim, one destiny, carried the same spirit of self-determination through enterprise. So in short, Garvey was Washington's ideological heir at first. W. Du Bois, the intellectual gatekeeper model. Oh, hold on. So I got this to present too, right? Right? Education, so that's Marcus Garvey. Garvey can speak to poor black Jamaicans because he is one of them. Educated enough to articulate their pain, bold enough to confront the system, and spiritual strength to give them hope. So Garvey was confrontational to the system, right? Right? Education. Who dominated education? Brown mulatto teachers, Anglican clergy, right? I think that goes on in Black America. It's only hidden because in Black America because you have white people who are the dominant, and it kind of hides it. But even amongst light skinned people, there's a light skin hierarchy amongst that. Because I think they'll try to put Angry Man in that same. That's what the war was between Drake and motherfucking Kendrick Lamar. And I don't think Drake is even part of that elite, brown elite. You feel me? Right. Why Garvey diverged from Washington? Washington's model was racial uplift within the white America. Garvey's model became racial liberation beyond the white America. Right? Booker T. Washington, integration through economic respect. Marcus Garvey, global black sovereignty. Scale, Southern U.S. development. Worldwide African unity. Tone, diplomatic, cautious. Bold. Marcus Garvey was bold, militant. Vocational, education, business. Mass movement, ship alliance, political organization. View of whites. Corporation possible through self-help. Systematic domination must be escaped. Tuskegee Institute. Black Star Line steamship. So Marcus Garvey was like, no, I don't want to integrate with white people. We have a large enough force. We could separate and have our own systematic thing, right? Marcus Garvey said, as long as we're in the system, in white people's system, we will not be able to truly grow on our own and create our own force, right? But this is their timeline of their spectacles at that time, right? Because at the time, America was extremely racist, right? So whatever, when you look at Black Wall Street and these things, these are examples of white people saying, no, we're not going to allow you to grow to gain economic power. And Marcus Garvey was like, okay, cool. Since we're not divided at the table, we're going to build our own table. Garvey admired Washington discipline, but rejected the idea that black progress should remain inside a white-controlled structure. He saw that even if you built wealth in the U.S., whites could still control your markets, laws, and life. So he said the Negro needs not charity, but opportunity to be independent man in his own nation. That's the leap from integrationist self-help to Pan-African independence. The psychological lineage I've noticed, right? I said FBA stems from those top-down models. They talk exactly like W. Du Bois. They get to define who is black and who is not. That perspective here is why. Era, elite definition of blackness, right? Grassroots definition of blackness. The 19th century, Du Bois, the talented intellectual respectability, moral guardianship. Garveyism, racial pride, economic power, African unity. 1930s to the 1960s, NAACP, academic leadership defined Negro identity. Garvey Act, and later Nation of Islam, grassroots, populism, defined self-sovereignty. 2000s to 2020s, FBA, ADOS, redefined authentic lineage, controlling who counts. Pan-African, a diaspora voice promotes shared struggle and mobility, right? So FBA is the same shit. It's the same top-down W. Du Bois model. It's the same thing. Right. I think this is the end of this. Okay. So the intellectual gatekeeper model. Du Bois represented the opposite pole. Harvard and Berlin educated. believed in entirely intent, an educated elite of black men who could lead the race, favored classical education and political agitation over manual labor or entrepreneurship. That's saw Garvey as a demagogue appealing to the ignorant masses. Du Bois wanted racial leadership defined by credentials and cultural refinement. Garvey wanted leadership defined by love of race and service to the people. That tension, elitism versus populism, is exactly what I'm describing in the FBA mindset today. All right. So yes, the FBA framework mirrors Du Bois' intellectual gatekeeping more than Garvey's open Pan-African populism. It's the idea that there's an official lineage entitled to define blackness and its boundaries, rather than a global family working toward collective sovereignty. Right? The core difference in models: economic uplift, vocational skills; racial sovereignty, global unity; cultural elitism, political integration. Right. So this is between Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, and Du Bois. Bottom up, but within system. Bottom up, outside system. That's why I say Marcus Garvey is a Sigma boy. Top down, within system. Similar freedom. School, farm, factory. Nationship flag. Nationship flag. So now, ain't that what FBA is doing? Nationality, but y'all say you're not a nationality. You say your organization, which is still Marcus Garvey in essence. Nationship flag. University legislation. Poverty. Main enemy: poverty, colonialism, ignorance. Ultimate goal: respect within America, independence from empire, equal place within America, equality. And to be equal with the liberal space in America, guess what you got to be? A whole bunch of social bullshit. Garvey took Washington's bottom-up economic strategy but added a top layer, political sovereignty. That's why his message threatened every colonial and elite structure, black or white. So that's the difference between Booker T. Washington and Garvey. Washington wasn't threatening because it worked within their system. Garvey was threatening because it said political sovereignty. Right? So it means that you don't want to be a subject to whatever social hierarchy or whether it be white social structure at that time. The meaning of all of it. When it connected dots, Booker T taught self-help within America. Garvey taught self-rule beyond America. Du Bois taught intellectual management over America's black masses. Each model still exists today under new liberals. And your leader in the intellectual management is black women. That's your slave master. Today's echo: FBI authenticity, who's real black. Ancestor: Du Bois' talented tent culture gatekeeping. Black entrepreneurship, respect to excellence, Booker T. Washington's industrial model. Pan-African unity, build our own nations, Marcus Garvey global nationalist model. All right. So yes, why would no? That's another thought. So yes, you've correctly traced the FBA mindset back to top down. Lineage defined elitism that came out of the Du Bois camp and the post-Washington era. It defines blackness by control and exclusion, not expression and empowerment. Not expansion and empowerment, right? I can see why Marcus Garvey would threaten a lot of white people because, like, you want to create a black thing separate from the table that can rival all power. And, we don't want dark-skinned niggas to, rival us or whatever. But yeah, man, I'm going to do another presentation in the future about how Sigma and Jamaicans and the essence of a Sigma, Benjamin the Wolf, and Marcus Garvey are all connected. I'm going to do a video on that. Right. So, that's important to look at. Anyway, this is Kish Yardie Gamer Nation. Make sure you watch the full video, like, share, and subscribe. When you're watching the full video, you don't got to watch it all at once. Take breaks. When you're at your work break, watch it. When you on your toilet, watch it. When you're taking a shower, listen to it. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm handsome. So for the ladies out there, you feel me? Anyway, Kish Yardie Gaming Nation or Kish Yardie Views and Vlogs. I'm out.